Hey guys, Sector here, and today I'm going to rank every Arthur Season 3 episode from the worst to the best. Let's just get started. I don't have any back notes to start this video on. Number 30 is Arthur Rides a Bandwagon. This episode is terrible. The worst episode of the series in my opinion. So far, at least. That's because That's because this episode was kind of mean spirited. And yes, sure, they were talking about fads, and I guess they did teach kids about fads. Well, however, I just think this episode is mean spirited towards Arthur. How everyone has a Woogle and he doesn't. I was expecting this episode to be much worse in my opinion. Well, I was and it was as bad as I thought it was. As I thought it was at first. Except for the ending. I really thought that the bottle cap trend or fad was going to be something Arthur realized, so making his Woogle pointless. But that was a sad ending. That wasn't a sad ending for Arthur. I thought it was a sad ending for him. It turned out that he was actually the one to create the bottle cap fad. So yes, I do think this is a really bad episode. However, the ending is the redeeming quality about this episode. Number 29 is Buster's Growing Grudge. Unlike the last episode, I didn't really like much about this episode. However, I do think it's not as bad as the previous episode I mentioned, because it wasn't that mean spirited. It wasn't as mean spirited as that one. Not everyone is against Binky, it's just Buster who is. Binky keeps on getting in Buster's mind because he thought he stole his joke. And yes, I do think Binky stole Buster's joke, which kinda derails his character a bit. I'm not sure if he did, but it's likely that he did, and Buster did have a reason to get upset at him. It just doesn't change the fact Buster that this is still no excuse for Buster to want to wish terrible things on Binky. Number 28 is And Now Let's Talk to Some Kids. This episode is not that bad, but I still think it's bad because I think the plot is just kind of messy. I mean, sure, the jokes are funny, like every day when you're walking down the street, you stop and think, and the title card with Brain's new puppy. However, that's all I like about this episode. I just really do not like how Arthur and friends want to convince Brain to go on TV. And sure, when when they need Brain's help, he doesn't even volunteer to be on TV, even though he knows all the answers to those stuff, or he knows how to do it well. I mean, sure, he does help. He does help his classmates. However, that's not that much of a reason to not be on TV. Brain could have been a TV star, and he could have made the And Now Let's Talk to Some Kids thing much better. Number 27 is Arthur and DW Cleanup. DW is kind of annoying this episode. Arthur and DW just really argue over what they do to each other's stuff, sorting them in order, and even the and each other just throws things in the trash. I mean, yes, sure, the moral is to help each other, but still, that's not much of a reason for this episode to not be a bad episode, in my opinion. Because I just think it was really annoying, and Arthur just doesn't want to clean his room. He just wants to go right away. He keeps on making excuses. Seriously. Number 26 is DW Tricks the Tooth Fairy. This is a rehash. This isn't a bad episode, but it kinda came close. It's a rehash of Arthur's Tooth, which is an episode I didn't really like in the first place. However, this episode is kind of worse because DW wants to get rid of her tooth, not because she was made fun of, but because she wants to get money. I do like the last few minutes of this episode where Arthur wants to make sure that the tooth fairy comes back again, and so he just replaces DW's fake teeth with some money. So yeah, he pretends that he's a tooth fairy. Also, I think he is the tooth fairy because that's actually how tooth fairies work. It's actually not it's the tooth fairy is non-existent. It's just through someone. Otherwise, otherwise, if that wasn't there, then this could have easily been a bad episode. Number 25 is Mom and Dad have a great big fight. I just really think that I just think the moral was executed well, but I just think it was kind of the imaginary sequences were kind of mean spirited in my opinion. Not much I have to say beyond that. Number 24 is Buster's back. Buster's finally back, and this actually leagues above the previous episode because Buster finally came back. However, I'm not giving it anything other than a 1 out of 10, but it's not the negative numbers at least, because at least this episode is more close to good than bad. It's about Arthur worrying that things change about Buster. Sometimes it might be good things that change about Buster, but actually he thinks there will be bad changes about Buster. It kind of fits for for a season premiere episode, but I do not think it's that much of a good plot. Not that interesting to me, in my opinion. Number 23 is Clarissa's Cracked. This episode was just kind of boring, except for the Mr. Ratburn scene where Arthur just goes to Mr. Ratburn, and then there was this scene where DW thought that Mr. Ratburn was just going to destroy Clarissa, but he actually helps. It was actually a smart idea for Arthur to go to Mr. Ratburn because he knows that he can fix puppets because he always does puppet shows. He can fix dolls because he always does puppet shows. Number 22 is Meet Binky. I guess the rest of this episode is decent. However, the twist ending is actually super stupid. I mean, sure, it wasn't predictable or anything, but we get the hologram again. In the episode before it, the Binky team were actually real, but they actually turned out to be holograms in this. I don't know. I don't know. It could have, if that twist ending wasn't there, then even if it was predictable, it would have still been a good episode. But since the twist ending is there, it's really confusing, honestly. It elevates this. It puts this episode to only the 22nd spot, and only earns it a 2 out of 10. Because if the twist ending wasn't there, it could have been really good. Number 21 is Francine and the Villain. Francine the Feline. Arthur's anti-cat stuff is actually something I really do not like about this episode. He says that there are no good cats. And and he and Francine just argue over it. They think that Francine think I guess Francine's likable, but yeah, Arthur just drags this episode down. If he wasn't that much of a cat hater, I mean, I guess the ending was good because they did learn because Arthur does learn his lesson. If Arthur's anti-cat stuff wasn't there, then this episode would have been decent at least. The reason why it's above Meet Binky is because this episode is still was more interesting. Number 20 is Revenge of the Chip. The first good episode of this season, I mean the least good episode of this season, I do like Revenge of the Chip. This is the sequel episode to The Chips Are Down, and it's about DW accusing Arthur for spreading the news about the green chip incident to everyone. That isn't that much of a good plot, but I guess this episode was funny enough to for me to give it a 3 out of 10. Number 19 is Popular Girls. I just really like how Fern and Sue Ellen think that that Fern should have been much more confident, and that Sue Ellen should be less competent, should act less competent. Oh yeah, and Binky was funny in this episode. Number 18 is Binky Rules. I'm not sure if this episode rules or not, but whatever. I just really like the twist ending. That it was actually the name of the band who created the song that Arthur and his friends like. I do not like how Binky keeps on getting accused. But I do like that the Binky band actually apologizes to the Yellow Bulldog. Number 17 is The Ballad of Buster Baxter. This is one of the big flashback episodes, the big reference episodes of the season. We're going to get to the other one later. The Ballad of Buster Baxter is a really funny episode. I really like the singing moves. And I just like songs in Arthur. We'll get to the musical episode later, though. Number 16 is What Scared Sue Ellen. 16. In 16th place, we have the episode where Sue Ellen becomes scared of something she thought was real. However, that howling thing actually turned out to be Perky, who was actually the mother of Pal, Arthur's puppy. And I like how they just save her. Yeah, and I think this episode was also pretty interesting, generally. That's all for Arthur Season 3 Part 1. You will see my top 15 in the next video.